there does need to be some support for straight men because their fathers, their grandfathers may not have shown them that. And I'm not trying to say that everyone before was bad people, but the millennial dad who splits, parenting stuff down the middle with his wife, it's a pretty new phenomenon.
And it's a ticket talking Mazda for the biggest. That's a comma and a comma and a comma. Gotta get it. And it's a ticket talking Mazda for the biggest. That's a comma.
Hey Zoe, nice to see you. How are you?
Good, thank you. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for joining us today, and I can't wait to get all into all of your professional and personal insights for all us mamas out here. Let's start from the beginning. Tell us a little bit about like your background and how did you get to where you are today?
Yeah, so I'm a registered social worker in Ontario. So we use the term registered over licensed. It essentially means the same thing. So I've been in the industry now for almost 7 years. And at this point in my journey, I work primarily with mothers of babies and toddlers. So I work from a variety of different angles. I work with people who are pregnant and they're expecting, and we talk about like the motherhood journey, getting them set up for that. I work with people who are immediately postpartum. I also work with people with young kids who are looking to um, make the motherhood experience a little bit more empowering. A lot of the time, even though there's so many endorphins and we're so excited for the baby, there's a little bit of a letdown of how come nobody told me this? How come nobody told me this? Like I was this person before, and how do I synthesize this with who I am now? And finally, for people who are interested, I provide sleep without sleep training services, meaning support with getting the baby and the family to sleep without using some of the traditional sleep training services that some people don't necessarily feel comfortable with anymore.
Well, like cry it out and things like
Crying
that
out
that
and
we'll get
fervor.
into. Oh
Yeah,
my God.
exactly. Yeah,
This might get controversial, but before
for
we get
sure.
into that, like, because I always feel like it takes, like, a certain type of person to go into social work. I feel like there's something like well, I won't just make you, like, a hero, just tell me, like, where it came from, because I feel like it takes something, like, selfless in you to decide that you're gonna go into social work.
I've always been interested in people and like why they do things the way they do. Like I definitely went down rabbit holes as a teenager of like learning about a concept and being like, oh, why do people do this? Like how do people gravitate towards this? Like why? And I think the human connection has always been something very interesting to me and how much we can do for people by supporting them emotionally and psychologically. And relationships were always interesting. So it led me to social work, sort of by proxy. At first I didn't understand that social workers were therapists, and I had someone explain that to me. And because I came from a teaching background first, I went the master's route, and it was great.
Oh, wow, yeah, because like, when you say you, like, wanna understand people, I would think, like, psychology or something, and
Yeah, absolutely. I didn't really have an interest in doing like testing per se, and the PhD in Canada was very like it did have that clinical component, but it also had a lot of like diagnostics and testing and learning disability assessments, and those things are really important. But I didn't see that as a cornerstone of my practice, so it wasn't a route I chose to go.
yeah, actually, I can understand that because also when I was like choosing what I wanted to do, and I'm like, I want to help people, feel better and be healthier. And then the first thing I thought of was like a doctor, but then I saw what that entails and how long they study and everything. I'm like, but I don't really want to
And no,
go
yeah.
also the pharmacology route. And then I didn't even know what a dietitian was. And then I found out what a nutrition is. And I was like, ah, that's what I want to do. I want to help people feel better with like food, with things that are like accessible to them. So yeah,
And there's
I
so much we could do
understand.
with that. Yeah. So
Right,
that
yeah. So I understand that choosing like you're like, okay, it's not necessarily the first thing people think of when they think of like, helping people. So sure. Okay, well, tell me what it like you have so many different areas that we can dwell in, but I think one of the things that I'm most like curious about right now, well, I think that that could be also useful is the whole like prenatal and postnatal aspect. And we kind of chatted about that before, how a lot of the things that we like nobody tells us until it's like, and then you find out. So maybe we can get a little bit into that part.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of patriarchy, unfortunately, still very woven into the motherhood experience. And I think, if we look at even pregnant, right? You're supposed to be glowing, you're supposed to be happy, you're supposed to be excited all the time. But at the same time, you're also going through life. You're also still at work. You're still, taking care of other kids. And I think that there's a lot of pressure for women to feel like I need to be present. I need to be in a flowing dress, like throwing my head back in laughter all the time. Right. So my role is to help manage sort of the other aspects of life while we're, simultaneously pregnant. And I think postpartum depression, postpartum anxiety, and postpartum symptoms, we still work from a very punitive model. We still work from, okay, woman has this, we need to put the baby somewhere else and the mother somewhere here. And, it's her fault somehow, as opposed to how can we work with both, par- you know, parties in the mother baby dyad to make this experience better and understand where she's coming from. And looking at things like traumatic birth experiences, of course, genetics and past history, but also what is going on around her that may be contributing to this? Like, how is the family system helping or hurting this person?
Wow, so many points that you said there, like so true. I'm just thinking about just 2 days ago, I had a client and she was asking me, like, it wasn't even a nutrition question. She told me that I feel like she's in her first trimester and she feels sick all the time. And that's completely normal for a lot of
Yeah,
women.
it's
And
so
she
nauseous.
asked me, like, she said, I just feel she felt bad that every time her husband comes home from work, she's tired and she just feels bad and she feels like she's being a downer. And I'm like, you're growing a baby inside of you and you feel sick. It's fine. You don't have to pretend like, but it just like speaks to what you were saying. Like we feel like we have to be like, of course we're grateful, that we have the opportunity to bring life, but it's not like we just have to be pleasant and glowy all the time.
Well, that's just it, and I think that there's a lot of, like, usually when I talk to women in these situations, there's often messages within the family system or the sort of internal social structure of their life that's reflecting that back to them. Like, usually there's a parent or friends or relatives or their in-laws who are making them feel like this is something that they need to be doing, or they're saying this implicitly or explicitly.
Yeah, yeah, it could become from your background. Some backgrounds are like, yeah, you like want to be the happy wife, and like no matter
Yeah.
what you're going through.
Absolutely. And we're seeing these messages online a lot now. And I think, every generation has their struggles, but I think with social media and people sort of coming online and like standing on their soapboxes and being like, pregnancy is this, like, you need to be eating all organic foods or you need to be exercising or not exercising or looking like this. Like, people don't know where to turn.
Wow, that's a whole other rabbit hole we can go down is social media. I remember when I was pregnant and everything, all the advice they have online. And what do you think about people who like maybe they don't have the village or a network and then they go to social media for advice in these groups and where that leads them sometimes?
I think it's really difficult because I think it pits women against each other. I think there's a lot of like, it's one thing to say, and I have clients and, I operate from this framework myself of, I don't do cried out, I don't do these things. But, what the way social media positions the issue is that we need to be screaming at the people who do without understanding why they do. Right. And it creates this unnecessary polarity. And I think that we all want to be part of something, but standing on our soapbox and screaming about it is sort of the way that social media has become about these issues instead of what are the facts, for this issue? What's the research here? How do we understand this? And, how do we form opinions about here and hope it makes sense for our family?
Wow, totally. It's like we lost the agree to disagree part in social media. Like everybody, like my point, my opinion is right and yours is wrong, and there's no in between.
100%. And, I'm all for people saying like, I don't agree with you for this reason, but I think that, it's just a lot of verbal skirmishes as opposed to what are we actually doing and how can we work as a collective to help mom and baby.
Wow, totally. So what would be some before we go into postnatal for any prenatal or pregnant mamas out there right now, what would be your advice to like, deal with these what would be your advice as a generally speaking, and not like
So I think one of the things that like I would say for a first time parent, and my husband and I were so surprised by some of this, is like you don't have to know where you stand on every issue, but sit down as as a couple and talk about like, okay, how are we feeding? What are our boundaries at social gatherings, right? How are we going to handle certain people. Where do we sit with sleepovers? Like, I was shocked by like the amount of people, the amount of times relatives were like, "Oh, so you're gonna leave the baby overnight?" And like, we personally were not ready. And I also understand people are, right? And I think that like knowing where you stand on these things or where you might stand on these things is actually really important. And I think finally, um, really just saying that there's going to be a lot of people who are going to tell you a lot of things. And you really have to lean into what is best for your baby, what is best for your child. My oldest has his best naps still at age 3 in the car, or in the stroller in like the loudest noise possible. He defies every baby or toddler sleep rule. And it used to drive people crazy, but that's what worked for us. And whatever your version of that is, like, be proud of that, own that, and that's fine.
Wow, I love that. And that is true. No, like that's something nobody told me before, but have some of these conversations before you have the baby. It's like things you don't even think of. Like, but I think it's also good. What do you think about like, and I could think you kind of implied that you don't have to make a concrete decision before. Cause I didn't know if I was gonna like enjoy breastfeeding and if I was gonna continue breastfeeding. Meanwhile, my son's almost 2 and I'm still breastfeeding, but I thought I was gonna be, I didn't know. So I think it's also okay to like you know, research both and then decide as you as you get there.
Yeah, I think, like, you don't have to, like, be standing and, like, know exactly what you're doing, but I think just having ideas of, like, "Okay, what do I think I want in some of these scenarios? And what do I think I want this to look like?" And it's very okay to go back and say, "You know what? I thought I was gonna combo feed, but I'm good with breastfeeding, like, this works for me," or, "It doesn't," or, like, I thought that I was going to be like, totally in the crib and I'm co-sleeping or, the other way. Like I think just thinking about
Me too. I feel like you're talking to me. I thought I was gonna have him like, yeah, in his space. So we and then in the end he's still is with me in the bed.
for sure. Yeah, no, my both my kids end up with that every night. And it's like it just like is what it is, right? And I think that like, we have to tune out the rules because these rules were made by old white men and who were not mothers, who were not living and breathing the realities of parenthood. And
Mm.
I think that when we look at it that way, they were looking at convenience and they were looking at what sold. And that's how we got these, Ferbers and this, wise breath and all these things. And I think we just have to say what actually works for the child.
And speaking of co-sleeping, I don't know about there, but in Israel, I feel like it's so taboo. Like I was kind of embarrassed to tell people that I was co-sleeping. Like I felt like it meant that you were like bad mother. Only like maybe 2 of my friends knew, and they were like, but those are like close friends, and they were like, yeah, like look, at the end of the day, do whatever works for you. But like I just remember hearing like a friend judging another woman who like she heard that she co-sleeps and they were like, anyway, and then that's when I didn't say anything. But the more I like researched about it and like I say it's like it can like well you're the professional here. Like tell us about the benefits of co-sleeping and what are the risks?
So, I will say if you're co-sleeping with a baby under the age of 1, please, please, please follow the Safe 7 and look that up, meaning, firm mattress, baby on the back, not swaddled. Make sure you're really following all of those things.
No
Um,
pillows and
no pillows.
blankets.
Yeah, like blankets. Yeah, exactly. And I think like, I personally was not able to nurse my kids, but I know that, friends of mine or peers that did, having a breastfeeding baby in the bed was easier and more functional. And I get that too. I think that it does promote some closeness. Like, yes, you don't have to co-sleep to have good attachment, but can it help if it's a useful tool for you and your family? Sure. Also, caveat, you can also have close ones with your baby in a crib, so that's not what I'm saying. But I think there's that. And there is a level of SIDS prevention as well, with the baby in the bed as long as it's safe. So many people do gravitate to it. And I think that one of the things I always tell clients is have a safe bed sharing setup ready, even if you don't want to do it. And you don't have to. There's nothing wrong with saying I'd like my kid to be, comfortable in his own sleep space or her own sleep space. But you never know how you're going to feel at 4 in the morning and what's going to just feel easier for you that night.
Right. Yeah, I didn't know. Like we had a crib and everything set up and after like, nights on nights where I just wasn't sleeping and I'm getting up a million times a night to breastfeed. And then that night where I just let him I could finally sleep and he slept better and I slept better. And then that's just how it like developed. So yeah. But I love how you like put it. You're saying it's not like any judgment to people who do or don't. It's just really individual, whatever works for each mom. And like nothing is, it's not black and white. Nothing is like bad and good.
Yeah, I think we have a real like obsession with like what other people are doing in their bedrooms. And I think we ought to think about that because if something works for a family, it's like totally okay to say that that's not what you would have done. But, for the people judging for co-sleeping and angry about this, like, why? If it doesn't work for you, just don't do it.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Instead of like, judging other moms. And I'm such a like nerd and researcher. Like I looked up everything about like, co-sleeping and research before because of course, like why would a mother purposely want to put her child in danger? And
No.
if you exactly right. So I'm just like, it's nothing. Anyways, I released that fear now that he's older. Like now I'll like tell people, yeah, we actually co-slept from like, from the beginning. But before I was just like, how is he sleeping? Fine. But I don't want to say why he's sleeping fine.
Yeah, and I find that we like why like it's interesting that like that's even a question. Like why do we need to ask people that? Like it's yeah.
Yeah, that is true. It's like what you said. We're like, we're just nosy what people are doing in their bedrooms.
Yeah, we love to measure our babies in terms of their level of convenience. Like, when I was at Rosh Hashanah with my daughter, and she was 3 months old at the time, there was all these comparisons between like her and my son, and I was like, he's standing right there. Like, no,
Wow.
like I'm not gonna say anything. Like,
Yeah, that is something that's true. Like we sometimes pretend like they're not, even if they're young, like they don't notice and they don't hear. I remember things like that from when I was little, like when they would compare. I have three other siblings, and I'm like, what? But yeah, that is true.
yeah, like he's right there with the ball. Let's acknowledge him. Like, please.
Yeah, and each baby is totally different developmentally wise, and
He also had sleep apnea, so he needed all this other stuff. And it was like, okay, like
you're comparing like apples to oranges. These are two different creatures, human beings.
absolutely with very different temperaments.
Yeah. Okay. So now let's shift over to like postnatal. So what is your advice for like new moms after babies arrived? Well, we talked about the co-sleeping thing, but do you have any other insights to share?
Yeah. So what I would say is, think beforehand how you feel about visitors. I think
Mm.
there's a lot of opinions online. You don't need to delay visitors, but you also don't need to have them right away either. And I think be really conscious of who's coming into your space after and that they are helping you, that they are not projecting onto you, that they are not making this about them and their needs. There's a lot of different generational views I've noticed about like what
Mhm.
postpartum looks like. And I think it's really important to have a really strong sense of this is what we are looking for as a family unit. And we want to make sure that those of individuals coming into our bubble understand.
Wow, that is so true, especially when you're coming from like a multicultural family. Like my husband's Serbian and I'm Israeli and American, and everybody has their like way of how you're supposed to do things and how often you bathe and how. And I was just like, and then we just decided we're just gonna do like we're the ones here with our baby every day. We're gonna do what works for us.
And everybody's like on their high horse about it. Like,
Yes, so many
yeah,
opinions.
we had a relative that was like, horrified that the baby wasn't taken from us after birth. And we're like, we want the baby with us. Like, Sit down. Like,
Oh my gosh, that's true. I remember
yeah.
when I just told like I said that too. I told my friend like just before, I don't know how we got to the topic, but I said I want like FS like zero separation. And then she said, no, no. She said, trust me, you're gonna want him to go to the nursery so you can like recover after like and I was just like, okay, I'll keep an open mind about it, but it didn't change. Like I didn't want them to take my baby anywhere without me or my husband with them. But
Oh,
it's
yeah.
just
No,
funny. I'm
like,
like, no, no, trust me. You
people, like, get on that, right? And I think, like, it's so interesting how much people project about those types of things.
yeah, it's true. Another one that is like I get a lot, like me and my friends like talk about it too. It's like the difference between like how can we support fathers or our spouses, like or any partner that's maybe not like having the switch as fast as like the birthing the birthing mother is like sometimes because I can tell like for my husband he's like super supportive and everything but it took him I don't know I guess it's true that we have like maternal instincts and like sometimes it takes fathers a bit more time to like get the hang of things and like know what to do and connect.
Yeah, I think it's hard because we don't have, like, millennial dads are spending, I think it's about 4 times more time with their children as their
Oh,
peer.
I can see. And
Yeah.
just anecdotally, I believe that.
Yeah, I think we're down to it's somewhere between 3 and 6% don't change diapers, whereas in the '60s, I think it was almost half, and if not more. And I think because of this, we don't have a precedent to show them what this looks like. And
Mm,
we need more therapy at the beginning for fathers and, of course, partners of all genders so that they can understand a what the parenthood like transformation looks like and have support. And I think and I do think that we do need support for all people, but there does need to be some support for straight men because their fathers, their grandfathers may not have shown them that. And I'm not trying to say that everyone before was bad people, but the millennial dad who splits, parenting stuff down the middle with his wife, it's a pretty new phenomenon. And having someone to talk to and work through that with, I think would be very helpful for the
wow, that
general
is
population.
that's so true. I like never thought about it like that. Like I'm just thinking about his like the men in his family, like the previous generations. Like they even laugh about like the not in joking, but like they didn't have anything to do with the children. That was like on the mom. And my husband is like so involved. And it's like you said, there's like, but I just so it's true, they don't have anybody to consult on other straight men to consult with from their older generation. Not everyone, of course, but just like for example, my Serbian husband, so from the Balkans, they really that wasn't a thing.
It wasn't, and, it's very obvious to me, like, it used to drive me crazy because my husband would have, you know, be with our son, before our daughter was born, and even still, like, if he has the kids and I'm at the gym or I have something to go to, there's, like, this resounding level of like, applause from the family because, it's this big thing, and we
Yeah.
laugh at our millennials because we're like, "Ah, and, tomorrow I have the kids when he needs to go, I don't know, insert appointment here," right? But they were socialized to see this so differently. So I think that we need to be coming in with support for this population. And I know sometimes people will say like, "Oh, we don't need to support straight men any more than we do." But at the same time, we need to provide the blueprint for a positive form of masculinity because I think it's confusing. I used to see that a lot in my practice before I transitioned as well of men who wanted to do right by their wives and in these situations, but they didn't know what that looked like because they didn't see that growing up.
Yeah, wow, that's true. That's really that's so true and it makes sense when you say it. I didn't think about it like that before, but it makes sense. Okay, well, now let's get a little bit into you. We talked about some of these insights. Tell me, how is it that you do all of this and you see everything you do as a social worker? And how does that affect you, like with your home and, family dynamic?
Yeah, so I think he definitely gives me insight into things that we need to do better for mothers. It gives me insight into even sometimes, we go through things ourselves in our lives. We sometimes need to take a step back and remember, okay, this is normal. It's not just you, right? If you're hearing this 10 times over, it's not just you. And I also think it gives me a lot of insight in terms of the type of parent I want to be for my children and how I want to show up. And I think, hearing women talk about the challenges they have sometimes with their husbands shows me the importance of making sure we have that support for the men on the other side. Partners of all genders, of course, but that we have that specialized support for men.
Wow. And do you find that like all of your experience kind of did it make you more like, like maybe afraid when you were about to have children, or you like it made you more confident and empowered you more?
I think I definitely was very vigilant when my son was born in ways that I think may not have made sense to my parents and my husband's parents, but they were very adaptive in the end and respectful to the way we wanted things done. But I think I was very vigilant. I was very vigilant about things that maybe the rest of the population.
Wow. And I find sometimes, like, I don't know, for example, like I'm a dietitian, and before I had my son, I was just like, yeah, my son is going to eat like this and like this and like that. And then in reality, some days he just wants to eat like a schnitzel, and some days he just wants, and so I'm just like, okay, like makes me understand, like, other moms, like he does eat relatively well, but then I get other moms where they're just like, here, like whatever you want to eat, you want to eat just white foods today, like go for it. Did you ever have that too? Like, some things that you like expected you were going to be like this because of your profession, and then in reality you like kind of resonate with moms who had like challenges in certain areas?
Yeah, I definitely pride myself on being very patient and, respectful and like, authoritative but warm with my children. And there was one day in November 2023 where we had credit cards compromised, and I was on the phone and my toddler wanted a snack and I lost it. And I was like, oh my God, like, way too much to do that. Like, how did you just do that? But it also just gave me an understanding of like, the mom we see in the grocery store may not actually be a bad person or miserable or, you know, all the things we want to attach. That could be what just happened. And I think understanding those contingencies is important. Do we need to redirect people who are screaming at their children all the time? Absolutely. But the snapshots we see in daily life may not be reflecting the actual person.
Wow, you're so wise. All this like non-judgment and openness and everything. I love it. So,
Yeah.
so tell me, what are your takes? Like, we won't get too deep into it because we don't have that much time. But what are your general takes on sleep training?
So I understand why it's attractive, right? Because if we can say, okay, in 3 to 5 days, we're going to do this thing, and then the baby's going to sleep 12 hours, and okay, we're home for a weekend in October, let's just get this done. I get why we think that this is going to work. But I think that the problem is the people selling this as a solution have become sneakier and sneakier in a lot of ways. Number one, they're co-opting a lot of terms of attachment, and they're sort of doubling as life coaches, and they're making it really difficult to discern that they're really selling you forms of fervor, lighter forms, but they're selling you for forms of fervor. I also think that unfortunately, what we're asking is a developmentally inappropriate expectation. We're asking a child with a developing neocortex to self-regulate. And it would be great if we could teach that in 3 to 5 days. And if that was true, I think most people would. But unfortunately, it doesn't work like that. This training, is a form of extinction. And might that work on easygoing babies? Yeah. If I wanted to sleep train my daughter, I probably could. But it actually creates a lot of adverse effects on other children, not to mention blankets medical issues. And what I sort of come back to as a parent and as a provider is my son had sleep apnea, and had I sleep trained, would I have known that? And I think we need to be doing better for families than just selling extinction as a way to apparently teach people to sleep well, because we wouldn't be selling that to a 5-year-old.
And when you say extinction, is this the like cry it out method?
Yeah. So the way that I look at sleep training is ultimately it's different forms of extinction, right? We're trying to extinguish the cry response at bedtime and be convenient, right? And if we sell it under the guise if we're trying to self-regulate, it makes sense. But the issue lies in, um, you know, if the baby doesn't cry out for you, doesn't mean they're sleeping, and it doesn't mean there's not an issue. And I think we owe people better and more comprehensive responses so that everyone in the family can sleep better.
Wow, and just it's just so much like I remember when I was like maybe I'm supposed to be sleep training because I was seeing so much. My son is so like, he's so loud. Like when like I wouldn't even want to put the neighborhood, the city through that if I tried to do this cry it out method because
Yeah, that's my oldest. It would have been a gong show if I had done that.
yes.
So,
And
yeah.
I was fine, but I don't know, I just heard people and it was also I was influenced by social media. Everyone is like yeah, you need to sleep train your children. And so then I started to like look it up online and there's so much out there. I felt like everything was saying, yeah, by 6 months, your child should be able to self-regulate. Like, and I'm like, is something wrong with my child? Like, what is this? Like, it's just like, I don't know. It was just everything I was reading saying, yeah, they should be able to self-soothe. Yeah, that's what they should be able to self-soothe. And I'm like, what's wrong? Why is there like, is this because of like the older generation? Like what they did and that's why it's so prominent online or?
Yeah, it would be nice if we could self-regulate, but
At 6 months.
yeah, yeah. When you still poo your diaper and need
Right.
need someone to put your clothes on.
And then now that I like, now that he's older, I'm like, I think how crazy it is. Like they say, yeah, a baby can self-regulate and self-soothe themselves at 6 months, but don't worry about potty training them. At 3, that's when they have the ability. And I'm like, it's so like, you at 3, you like, no, then why not potty train them also? Like to train them to do everything again.
Let's just make them really have a 401k and drive their car at that point. Like, yeah.
Right.
So yeah, it's one of those things of like, I understand in Western society why we think we need to do this, but we can go about this in a different way.
Right. Okay. Thank you so much for explaining it like that. And now it's like, do you have any advice for other moms that are business owners and work, having like special routines or something?
I think outside of budgeting and outside of like the financial conversations you need to have as a family, I think, choosing the work you really want to do, making priorities, and I think having expectations. I had all of these thoughts of scaling and all of these things in my daughter's first year. And I realized that I was better off to just serve the clients I'm used to and, think about business expansion after that and it's not about giving up, but it's about prioritizing what's important to you and doing and seeing your business as part of you and your motherhood as part of you and not feeling like you have to choose one or the other.
No, I like that. Yeah, that's what some people feel like. I think some women feel bad that they have to like pause their businesses or like you said, like, want to be there for your child and or maybe you can't afford childcare or something. It's okay. Like it's such a short period. Like, my son's almost 2 and just flew by. And now you
Yes.
have a little bit more freedoms to do other things. And yeah, it's true. Like I like how you said, like you took a step back, you wanted to scale, but then, your child it gets older and then you can continue on. Well, thank you so much. This was such a awesome conversation. And before we
Yeah.
go,
Thank you so much for having me.
what can people find you? Are there any resources that you have online that can be helpful for us? Or
Yeah, so I'm at Mamas and Littles online. My first name is Zoe, last name Klein. I do have a therapy practice that I run in Ontario, Zoe K MSW Inc. But find me on Instagram, and I have a variety of coaching and social work options available depending on where you are in the world.
everybody check those out. And I'm sure they'll be very helpful for you. This has been a great conversation. And thank you so much. I hope we can have one again in the future.
Yes, thank you.
And it's a ticket talking Mazda for the biggest. That's a comma and a comma and a comma. Gotta get it, get it. And it's a ticket talking Mazda for the biggest. That's a comma and a comma.